In this video you will learn how to easily refute and destroy the Latvian Gambit. The Latvian Gambit emerges after the moves e4, e5, knight f3 and f5. This is the Latvian Gambit. A very aggressive move, but it has many defects, since it does not develop any piece and, in addition, weakens the a2, g8 and h5, e8 diagonals. Black's idea is to play a king's gambit but with the colors reversed. However, white is a tempo ahead and can easily gain an advantage. Black's idea is to sacrifice a pawn to try to take the initiative. For example, in case of e takes f5. Black advances with e4, he will be able to occupy the center with his pawns and will surely be able to capture the pawn on f5. He plays a kind of king's gambit with the colors reversed and has a good position. After f5, the best move for white is to capture the e5 pawn. Normally, in the open games, if black does not defend his e5 pawn, the best response for white is to capture the e5 pawn. Now white threatens to check with his queen on the h5 square. For example, in case of f takes e4. White plays queen h5 check and wins. For example, after g6, white plays knight takes g6, taking advantage of the pin along the h-file. After knight f6. Queen e5 check and white has a decisive advantage. Knight f6 is not good either, because white plays bishop c4 and threatens to invade with his pieces on the f7 square. White can castle, he can make the d4 move, to occupy the center with his pawns and has an advantage. Knight c6 is also not good because white responds with queen h5 check, and wins. For example, in case of king e7. White follows queen f7 check and the black king receives checkmate. And in case of g6, white plays knight takes g6 and is still winning. For example, in case of knight f6. White plays queen h4, keeping the pin along the h-file. For example, in case of rook g8. White can play knight takes f8 and is winning. Black can try to move his rook to g4, attacking the opposing queen. But after queen h3. Rook e4 check. Bishop e2. Knight d4, threatening to capture on e2. White can play knight c3, developing the knight and defending the bishop. Black can play knight takes c2 check. After king d1. Knight takes a1. White can play knight takes h7, the black king is very exposed. White can continue with moves like d3, bishop g5, rook e1 and has an advantage. If black captures on g6, white can capture the rook on h8. Black can play queen e7, trying to counterattack. White can play d3. After f takes e4. D takes e4. Queen takes e4 check. Bishop e3. Knight b4, threatening to check on the c2 square. White can capture the f6 knight. After knight takes c2 check. King d2. Knight takes a1. White can play bishop d3, developing the bishop and attacking the opposing queen. After, for example, queen takes g2. White plays bishop takes g6 check and black has to give up his queen. White wins. After knight takes e5, black can play queen f6. This is the main line of the Latvian Gambit. Black prevents the check of the white queen on the h5 square and will go to g6 to prepare to attack with his queen on the kingside. Now, the white knight is attacked. White can respond in two ways to gain advantage. d4 or knight c4. For example, after d4, white defends his knight and occupies the center with his pawns. White will be able to continue with moves like bishop c4, castling, and he has a very good game. However, surely the best and simplest move for white is knight c4, a move by Nimzowitsch. White's idea is to take the knight towards the e3 square, where it will be very well placed, since from there it will defend the g2 pawn. Black can capture the pawn on e4, to recover the pawn. White can play knight c3, developing the queen's knight and threatening to capture the e4 pawn. Now, black has two options: queen f7 or queen g6. For example, after queen f7, attacking the knight on c4 and preparing the move d5. White can play knight e3, defending the knight and taking control of the d5 square. The e4 pawn is still attacked and white will have the advantage. If black now plays knight f6, to defend the e4 pawn, white can play bishop c4, developing his king's bishop and attacking the opposing queen. After queen g6, white can play d3, attacking against the opponent's central pawn. The g2 pawn is perfectly defended and white has the advantage. For example, after e takes d3. Bishop takes d3, the black queen is attacked. White will be able to castle and attack against the black king, who is still in the center without castling. White has a clear advantage. After knight to e3, black can play c6, with the idea of being able to make the move d5. Now, white can capture the e4 pawn, or even better, he can make the move d3, attacking against the opponent's central pawn. After e takes d3. Bishop takes d3. White is ahead in the development. He will be able to castle, occupy the e-file with his rook and have an advantage. For example, in case of d5. White can castle. And if now black plays d4, attacking the two knights. White plays knight c4 and has an advantage. For example, if black captures the knight. White responds with rook e1 check. And after bishop e6. Queen g4 and white is winning. Since it is not possible king d7 to try to defend the bishop because knight e5 check wins the queen. After the move knight c3, another option for black is queen g6, defending the e4 pawn and pressing against the g2 pawn. Now white can make the move knight d5 and has an advantage. Or he can also play d3, attacking against the e4 pawn. After e takes d3. Bishop takes d3, the black queen is attacked. White can castle and has a clear advantage. After queen takes g2. White plays queen h5 check. He will be able to play bishop e4 to defend his rook, and he will be able to attack against the black king, which is very exposed. White is winning. In the next video we will study a very instructive game in which we will see how white easily refutes the Latvian Gambit.